Hello, my name is Jason Murray, and it is truly a privilege to serve as the president of the Dade County Bar Association. Joint resolutions to provide term limits for Florida's appellate judiciary are starting to gain traction and progress through Florida's legislature. The joint resolutions, Proposal HJR 197 in the House of Representatives and SJR 322 in the Senate, call for an amendment of Florida's Constitution to limit appellate judges and Supreme Court justices to serving no more than 2 full 6-year terms. Currently, members of Florida's appellate judiciary are appointed to office by the governor and serve 6-year terms. Under the current structure in Florida, there is no limit on the number of terms a Supreme Court justice or appellate court judge may serve. Each member of Florida's appellate judiciary, however, is subject to a mandatory retirement age. Florida's appellate judges and Supreme Court justices also are subject to the merit retention process that was established by Florida's voters in the mid-1970s. If a majority of the voters retain the justice or judge in office, then he or she serves a full 6-year term and then becomes subject to a merit retention election every 6 years. Despite a mandatory retirement age and the ability of voters to remove justices or judges from the appellate bench through a retention vote, proponents of the new term limit proposal argue that further measures are needed to shake up Florida's appellate judiciary in an effort to modernize the judicial branch. House Speaker-designate Richard Corcoran believes that he can introduce new energy and purpose into our judicial system by getting voters to enact 12-year term limits for judges. Corcoran stated in the House on September 16, 2015, that no public office, be it state representative, governor, or judge, should be for life. Corcoran's comments seem to miss the mark because members of Florida's appellate judiciary do not receive appointments for life. In fact, many opponents to judicial term limits view the efforts of Corcoran and others as judicial reform driven by nakedly partisan, result-oriented reasons that constitute nothing more than another attack on judicial independence. The latest efforts to remake or reshape the composition of Florida's appellate courts comes after a failed attempt in 2012 to split the 7-member Supreme Court into 2 5-member courts, one for criminal cases and one for civil cases. With 3 new appointments, the governor would have had the ability to pack either of the newly created courts with appointees that shared his ideology. After the defeat of the court splitting and packing measure, the legislature proposed an amendment in 2014 that would allow an outgoing governor to make prospective appointments to appellate courts instead of the incoming governor. Both the 2012 and 2014 efforts were viewed as political efforts to reshape the court's composition and rejected by Florida's voters. As with the other recently defeated measures, judicial term limits would present a governor with the opportunity to skew the ideology and independence of the courts. In addition, judicial term limits would cause the unnecessary loss of experienced and talented members of our judiciary, as well as the loss of institutional knowledge such members possess. Judicial term limits would also discourage many qualified lawyers from seeking to serve because it is extremely difficult for a lawyer to close his or her practice for 12 years, to serve on the bench, and then seamlessly return to the practice of law. The Dade County Bar Association supports a strong and independent judiciary and agrees with Justice Sandra Day O'Connor. Judicial independence doesn't happen all by itself. It's tremendously hard to create and easier than most people imagine to destroy. Accordingly, the DCBA opposes any efforts that would hinder independent judges of the highest quality and integrity from serving on the bench. The DCBA has passed a resolution opposing HJR 197 and SJR 322 that call for an amendment of Florida's Constitution to impose term limits on Florida's appellate judiciary. We encourage all Florida legislators to promote legislation that supports a strong and independent judiciary.